Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to our webinar. Today's session is titled Innovations in Technology and Management Models. This is a spotlight learning about the facilities program transformation happening at Chicago Public Schools. So very excited to have you with us today. We have an hour of time together, during which we're going to hear from a number of different folks in the facilities department at Chicago Public Schools, and we'll do some Q&A with them to hear the latest. Before we dive into that, I would just like to give you a little bit of an introduction to Healthy Schools campaign, so you know who you're hearing from and who I am. My name is Sarah Porter, and I'm the Vice President of External Affairs at Healthy Schools Campaign, which is a nonprofit organization based in Chicago. We work both in Chicago and across the country, operating on the premise that healthy kids are better learners. We have a very strong focus on serving traditionally underserved, underprivileged, underrepresented communities, and we work on issues like school food and green cleaning and access to mental and behavioral health services, many different things, a holistic approach to making sure that schools are places where students can learn and thrive. Today, we're going to be focusing on content related to our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, one of our many different programs. This one is really about healthy, sustainable facilities management. It's a program launched about a little over 2 years ago. Still fairly new out in the world, but we're very, very excited about it. This is a program that really supports K-12 districts and higher education institutions in their efforts to make sure that their day-to-day facilities operations are promoting health and sustainability as much as possible. The centerpiece of the program is a standard that has 40 pages of criteria, all that really seeks to set a high bar for what a school district or college can be doing in terms of health and sustainability and facilities management. And that standard then is supported by a number of different program elements, including an assessment that schools can use to measure, how they currently measure up against that standard. There's trainings and guidebooks and programming all throughout the year to help school districts and universities make adjustments to their program. And then ultimately, when a school district or college is ready, then they can submit all of the necessary documentation to earn a certification against this third-party science-based standard to show the level of excellence that they have achieved in this area of work. Most importantly, all along the way, the program offers an opportunity to network with other school facility professionals who are participating in the program for sharing and learning and accelerating best practices and all of that really good stuff. So if you're not familiar, please check out our website to learn more. This program is made possible by the support of our corporate sponsors. Our companies that we work with on this program all have offerings that can help schools meet our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standards. So thank you to them for making today's program and our year-round program possible. Appreciate their support. One more thing on the program, just to show you the list of districts and colleges across the country that participate in the program. When they sign on, they make a 3-year commitment. It's not a small thing, but it's a very exciting commitment where schools are working towards meeting that standard. We have large and medium and small districts from all across the country participating, and several at the higher education level as well. And today's programming is, again, really a spotlight on one of our participants, Chicago Public Schools. So excited about that. So let's dig in. I'm going to tell you who we're going to be talking to today, and that way we can get them on here and get started. So I mentioned that today's webinar is really about innovation and transformation. And with us, we have 4 folks from the facilities department at Chicago Public Schools: Rob Christlieb, the executive director; Brian Martin, the deputy program director; Rich Schleier, who is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety, and Paige Acton, the Environmental Manager. So we're going to give each one of them an opportunity to take a few moments to present some information to you. And then when they're done, we'll bring them all up and go through a number of questions to ask them. If you're listening, please go ahead and use that Q&A feature to submit questions for any of our panelists. You can do that at any time throughout the session. You don't have to wait till the end. So go ahead and start sending those in. So we will get started by introducing our first panelist. Rob Chrisley, the Executive Director of Facility Operations and Maintenance, is here to join us. And Rob, we are so thrilled to have you both as a leader in this program and also as a panelist on our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited about sharing the story here at Chicago Public Schools. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Rob Chrisley. I'm the Executive Director of Facility Operations. I've been on the facility operations side for 6.5 years now, going on 7 years. I've either been Director of Operations or Executive Director of Operations for that time. And in that time, we've gone through a number of changes. And budget is one of the driving reasons why we're making changes, but I think it's also forcing us to make changes in a better direction that's more responsible and transparent for our students and their faculty and our staff. So I'm just going to give a little bit of history, and then my team will share some of the information of some of the particulars that we're doing and why we're doing it. But ultimately, Healthy Green Schools and Colleges has been a great help for us, and it came at almost the perfect time for us. We'll go back and tell a little bit of history here. Back 20 years, almost 20 years ago, the mayor took over the city, the school district in '96. And up until '96 to 2006, they tried a lot of different ways of managing our facilities, trying to get control of what's going on. We had a lot of outside vendors that were, I shouldn't say a lot, but there were a couple outside vendors that ran our facility operations for us and managed our custodians and our building engineers. But what we found was, basically we didn't have control, and they would basically, go through and spend the money and then say we're out of money and then we can't fix anything else. And it just wasn't working for the district. Then we had the 2008 with the Great Recession, really posed a start. It was the start of budget concerns for us that really multiplied over the next 7 years. That became substantial in 2015, 2016, and 2017. We had furloughs, we had layoffs, we had those type of things. So we really were pressed for dollars, and we're really looking for ways to improve our outcomes. We brought this stuff back in-house in 2006, 2008, but we weren't really getting the management that we needed on the custodial side or the engineering side. And I think, honestly, just to be direct and upfront, we had a very underperforming or non-performing union 143 that was our building engineers that just weren't investing in our buildings engineers. They weren't training our building engineers, and they weren't helping us to hold them accountable. So that was kind of like chaos on the side with our building engineers. They were kind of doing their own thing. So in 2013, we started a pilot program where we actually continued on a pilot program that we had from the Hill Mechanical, the 33 schools that were basically privatized management. They were new schools that the mayor had built for us. And those schools had independent 399 building engineers. They were called the Hill Mechanical. So basically an outside group managed those buildings, and they were all new. Basically they're the 33 schools that we built in the last 20 years. So they were the best schools that we had. They managed those buildings, and they were basically running that as a quasi-integrated facility management model. When that model, when we decided that we had to do something to save cost and really get control of what was going on in the district, we decided to move to an integrated facility management model. And that model, did a lot of stuff for us, brought some expertise in, but really drove the focus away from outcomes at Chicago Public Schools. And we were more likely, we were just basically managing a contract, not managing the facilities, and we weren't getting the outcomes that we wanted. The prioritizations, the needs, the good example I have is, hey, we had a water leak in a school, and we have 6 classrooms that got flooded. And I find out about it 5 or 6 days later, and I go, "Hey, are you guys going to fix that?" And they're like, "Well, do you want us to fix it?" I'm like, well, "Yes, we need all of our classrooms all the time, and we need them to be usable." So there's a difference in needs and priorities with the IFM. So um, in 2021, we had the opportunity, and that was after basically 4 years of using the IFM model. We realized that our interests were not being taken care of. So with the hybrid model, we started looking at other ways to bring the integrated facility management back in-house, and to actually manage this ourselves. And we started off with just the building engineers. We still had a contract with Aramark for custodial management and custodial services, but we focused on the building engineers to start with. And I'll say the big difference now with our model with JLL is that basically they're hired to work for us, and they do what we ask them to do. They're on the clock, they follow our SOPs, they're also trained by JLL, but ultimately they do what we want them to do and how we want them to do it. And that has proven to be very successful for us. I'm very happy with the outcomes of this program. It's given us a lot more control. We control all the dollars, so there's no, if CPS wants to spend the money, there's no hesitation or concerns about doing that. We spend the money, of course, if we have it. But that model has really been successful. We've got about 680 building engineers out there now, which is 200 more than we had under the IFM model. And that has really been a benefit because we're basically back to a one building engineer per school, and that allows a good number of services. Now, moving forward, that was working, but our custodial management stuff was still not working. And so last year, July 1st, 2024, we brought management of our custodial services back in-house. And that was a big jump for us. And I should step back. All the other contracts that we brought under the IFM, my team basically had to redo 24 contracts from scratch. So we had to rebuild the department basically with those contracts. And then in junction with that, we were also creating our SOPs, which had basically all of our operating stuff had disappeared 10 years ago. And we didn't have any of those basic SOPs and policies and procedures that we needed. So we've been recreating those. And Brian's team has been working, I think we're at 189 now that we've created over the last 2.5 years that have really formed the basis of our operational stance. Now we've moved forward to custodians. We actually brought the management back in-house. Our previous vendor was using 85 people to manage the account. We have currently 42. So we took a hit on staffing, but we have, in the last 7 months that we've been in-house, the results have been phenomenal. We had the best start of the school year we've ever had. We have people that care about what's going on, and we have really engaged our custodians both in training and in giving them crowd comfort, which you'll hear more about here later, but engaging them, giving them technology to help them tell us what's going on in the schools. Next slide, please. So this is I just wanted to talk about the engineering support program, how we've just split that up. We've got engineering, so that's the building engineers. We have facility management, so that's our building managers. These are our non-CPS employees. There's about 100 building managers. As I said, there's 670 building engineers plus. And then they also give us program management support. So they help us manage our cleaning program, our cleaning supplies with Cintas, which is a new program for us and has been very successful. Supply management, crowd comfort management, helping us with the phones. I'll tell you what, I never thought giving 2,500 people phones would be so hard. It's harder than I ever imagined. So they've been a great help there. They also do help manage our training program, which we've increased from 1 day to 10 days since Aramark is less. So that's a big difference in what we're having going on there. And then they also give us program control. So they're kind of like a whole, they're like my workforce in my management team, because I only have in-house, I basically have the FCFLs, which are my custodial management team of 42 people right now. We have 52 positions, but only 42 are filled. I have 13 facility management leads, which are basically responsible for an area of the city, usually anywhere from 30 to 60 schools. And then I have 2 regional managers that take the north and the south side of the city. Everything else, all the basic work is done by my JLL team, and it's managed by my in-house team. So these statistics and programs and compliance are really, they're really managers that are focused on compliance, public health, those type of things, elevator compliance, and that really helps us get things done. Next slide, please. I know I'm going a little custodial support program. So when we brought this in-house, it's you know, before we even brought it in-house, we actually took control of the equipment and the supplies, because neither of those were working with our Aramark contract. With the Centos, we basically started supplying, and we're getting deliveries once a week, but we know exactly what we're getting, and we're getting par levels established, and we're having well-managed and well-maintained storage rooms that actually have what folks need. And when they need it, it's either an emergency delivery or it's going to be there within 5 days. So this was versus what Aramark was doing, which was just deliver whatever they wanted to deliver for 30 days, every 30 days, and regardless of what's in the building or what's needed. Same thing with equipment. Their answer was buy more equipment. We've discovered that we have thousands of pieces of equipment in varying stages of repair or needing repair. Most of them are batteries, but you know, other things like that. Just trying to get control of all the pieces and that we have. And we've actually saved a lot of money now in this, you know, second year of this, because we're renting less and we're able to use more equipment and be more efficient. Custodial management. So half our custodians are CPS employees. The other half are privatized. So they come through vendors, and instead of having one vendor supplying all of our custodians, we now have 7 vendors that supply half of our custodians. And I should say the previous one, we supplied half, they supplied half. Now we have 7. And that has allowed us a lot of flexibility and the ability to say, hey, if you're not performing, I'm going to go to your neighbor and give the work to them. We haven't had to do that yet. We've hinted at it, and it's really changed outcomes for us, because before with Aramark, it was, well, whatever, you know, who are you going to give it to? It's us. So we're really working with them. They do not provide any management of the custodial cleaning itself. They just supply us with HR management for their folks and a representative to help us make sure that we're working with them and our employees and our, you know, all the HR stuff and the co-employment that works out. But it has been, to this date, we're 7 months into it. It's been very successful. So that's pretty much our talk, you know, or my talk, I should say. You know, the goal at Chicago Public Schools is, and we're even doing this more, and it just came up last month in our meeting with our third floor, our CEO suite. They want us to figure out more ways to bring stuff in-house so that we can still, you know, take away that profit margin and save the money there. And the other thing that we're really working on right now is doing work in-house. We're really driving with our building engineers to have work done in-house. We're supplying more tools and equipment that they can do more work, and we're expecting them to do, you know, basically put down the phone and pick up the tools. And that's allowing us to complete more work in-house, and that's an ongoing endeavor. And one of the things that we hope to have out of this once we get moving with this is that we actually can bring some trades back into the district. We have no trades whatsoever, no painters, no electricians, no plumbers. Any of those trades, I have to go to a various trades vendor to get that assistance, which is great. We have a lot of great resources and partners, but it is expensive for us. And we're looking to bring that in-house and to take care of a lot of that stuff in-house. So we're working on those programs. Basically, we've gone the whole gamut from private to privatization, back to public management of our systems, and we find that we're getting much better results than that. And so that we're very encouraged by that. That's all I have to say, other than one thing. As I mentioned, Healthy Green Schools came at a perfect time for us. You know, our team's been working on the SOPs. And when I first went out to California to hear about the Healthy Green Schools and colleges, I realized there were a lot of things that we were doing that were pulling in the direction of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, but it wasn't quite well defined, or what didn't have 100%, you know, we didn't test this or we didn't track that. And over the last year, the team has really done a great job of digging into what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it, and then working with Healthy Green Schools and Colleges to figure out a way for us to meet the requirements and to have a better understanding of what the requirements are so we can have better operations. And ultimately, the goal for me is to have a third party that tells me what I'm doing is good. What I've found in my life here at Chicago Public Schools after 12 and a half years is that no one trusts me and no one believes what I say. And so it's important that we have third-party folks and third-party standards that we are objectively rated upon. And that third-party person is then, it's not me saying that we're doing this well, it's somebody else saying that we're doing it well, and it's based upon best management practices. So that's one of the big reasons why we're here at Healthy Green Schools now, and we're working hard on getting our certification and we hope to be the first to be certified. Because it's important, because these are the things that we want to instill in our department, and these are the SOPs that we want to have, and these are the outcomes that we want for our district. So I look forward to any questions, and thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to you, Sarah. Sorry I went too long.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, Rob. I was happy to let you chat. You have so much to share, and it never ceases to amaze me the amount of imagination and creativity that it must take for you and your team to lead a district of that size through transformation like this. It's creativity, imagination, resilience, so many things. So I appreciate you sharing. I know there's so much more we could cover. But we're going to introduce our next speaker to hear a little bit more about some of the details that you did mention, specifically crowd comfort and a couple of other things. So I'm really excited to welcome Brian Martin to our panel today. Brian is the Deputy Program Director. Brian, we're thrilled to have you. So I'm going to stop talking and let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. Happy to be here. Very excited. Love being a part of the Healthy Green Schools, as we have been for, man, the better part of, I don't know if it's been the past couple months or year. I feel like it's really flown by. But Brian Martin, Deputy Program Director for the PMO office at Chicago Public Schools. Worked very closely with Rob and his team over the last couple years now in this transition that Rob had just talked through. This was a major transition, and it really forced Chicago Public Schools to take a holistic approach in how we develop the program and how we set up the management model by which we're going to be managing both engineering and custodial teams. And in doing so, it really made us look at how are we going to be able to do more with less, because we were also struggling with budget deficiencies, and we knew we were going to have to go into this with less resources than some of our partners had in the past. So in doing so, it really forced us not only to make sure we had the foundational elements in place, that being our standard operating procedures, and we had everyone understanding what those procedures were, making sure we had the right organizational structure and setup, and a lot of time went into that in developing that, making sure we had the right management structure in place to effectively manage. But on top of that, really then looking at technology and how we can identify and provide the right resources that our teams need to more effectively manage in the field. And that was a lessons learned for us in the past, as we watched other vendors try to manage a portfolio and really struggle to do so, even when instituting certain technologies. But what I would like to talk through today at a high level is just one kind of foundational piece on our custodial side that Chicago Public Schools has rolled out in an effort to do just that. If we can go to the next slide. So at Chicago Public Schools, again, Rob had indicated about a year ago, we did the official transition from outsource model to in-source model. Prior to that, we were spending the better part of the year before that really working to put the foundational pieces in place in order for us to more effectively transition. And that includes looking at technologies such as crowd comfort, which you're seeing some snapshots of here. Essentially what crowd comfort is it's a work validation or work management system for our custodial services teams. This is a technology that we had never had on the custodial side. We did have and do have a CMMS on our engineering side, and that's been a pretty standard piece of technology for managing our preventative maintenance and our work order management. But on the custodial side, we never had that level of detail and or the solutions necessary to more effectively manage the work that our teams are doing in the field. And it created a very large gap between the boots on the ground in the field and the management teams in understanding really how well we are performing within our schools as it relates to the cleaning and the daily cleaning, but also the project work during our seasonal breaks. So we had worked with Crowd Comfort. Again, it's been, I feel like almost 2 years now, it just from the start, embarking on developing and building out this specific technology and program within CPS. Crowd Comfort is a solution where we have QR codes placed in all spaces throughout every school within our district. These QR codes are used by our custodial teams to validate the work that they do on a daily basis within every single space within our building. And it provides the almost real-time feedback to our management teams so they can see at any given point in time how well we are performing as it relates to cleaning our spaces within our buildings. It also provides our teams with the ability and our field teams with the ability to have more of a direct contact with our management teams. And just to back up for a second, in order for this really to be successful for us, Chicago Public Schools also had to roll out mobile technology for our custodians, which is, again, something that we have never had in the past, and custodians never had any ability to contact or interact with our management teams other than a site visit and a one-on-one conversation, which when you have 42 managers across a portfolio of 520 campuses doesn't necessarily happen every single day. So with that being said, we have our mobile technology, we have Crowd Comfort in place. Now, custodians have that ability to help us identify what work they have completed, and or if they have issues within our buildings, they are able to work with their management teams and make requests, whether that be equipment issue requests, supply issue requests, so that our teams can quickly work to respond to those particular needs at the school and really support those custodians in making sure that they have those tools and resources necessary to more effectively work. So the work validation and validating the cleaning in our buildings and quickly responding to equipment and supply needs are really elements that were lessons learned for us in areas where we really struggled in the past, mainly because we didn't have that visibility. We didn't have that means of communication between teams, and now Crowd Comfort is providing that for our teams. It also is allowing us to set up and manage more proactively our custodial schedules. So in the past, this was a very manual paper process. There was very little visibility into it by our management teams and what those schedules were, and or even at the school level where principals didn't quite understand what each custodian schedule was, what they were responsible for, and the different sections within their particular buildings. So again, it really just creates that transparency, not only for us, the management teams, but also the schools and the principals as to what those schedules are for each of the custodians that are assigned in their buildings. And it creates that, that visibility for the custodians on what their schedules are, what their scope of work is related to that particular building for every given week. If we can go to the next slide. So this just gives a bit of an overview into the operational process and or the performance management process. So on the left here is really just a screenshot of the process itself. So we have a QR code in every single space within our buildings. And really, custodian has two different paths they can take. At the very top is the daily cleaning path. So when they are going into a specific space, they have their mobile device, they're scanning the particular QR code. Upon completing the work within that particular building, they identify the scope of work that they completed within that particular space. So if they're just doing a detail clean, they identify it's a detail clean. If they're doing a detail clean with floor care, they're taking care of that scope of work and scanning the QR code. And then taking a picture of that particular area and or the elements within that space that they completed that then completes that work order or that submission for that work validation that was done within that particular space. And that translates into crowd comfort and into the crowd comfort system itself, so that management teams can see that that particular space has been completed, whether looking at the virtual floor maps that we have with the pins to identify which spaces have and have not been cleaned, or simply looking at the percent clean within a particular building or at the portfolio level, so they can get a sense of how well teams are performing. The workflow at the bottom is the work order and or broken equipment workflow, where essentially if they do have issues with equipment, if they need to make a supply order or some other type of an issue that they need to communicate to teams, they would essentially select that particular workflow. They'd identify within it if it's a equipment issue, if it's a supply issue, if it's another issue, if there are particular pictures that they want to submit related to a piece of equipment that's broken, or to deplenish supplies or other needs, they would indicate that photo. That is sent on, and that does go into an integration to our CMMS, our work order management system that we have with on our engineering side. And those work orders then are directed to our management teams, our custodial managers, to address and close out those particular work orders. So that's kind of the operational process at a high level related to how it's used. And now on the performance management side, we do and have really been focused on performance management related to crowd comfort, usage, and making sure that we're working towards that change management that's really necessary in order for this overall endeavor to be successful. So we, as Rob had mentioned, there's currently 42 managers within our organization. We are set up by networks, so there's 13 geographical networks. The schools education side is set up via these networks, so we have aligned with these networks so we can more effectively partner with the educational side. And management teams are assigned. There's one leader for each network who's responsible for that particular network, and they have a certain number of custodial managers underneath them. Management teams are meeting daily, 7 a.m. every single day. Our teams are getting together. We're reviewing the performance related to how things went the previous day and or week. We're talking through some of the roadblocks and or struggles that our teams are encountering, whether that be issues with custodians not cleaning, whether we're having issues with vacancies, whether we're having issues with the crowd comfort system itself. Really talking through all those things with management and leadership so that together we can identify solutions and then work together to rectify those in an effort to continue to grow and make sure that this program is moving in the right direction. As part of this, the change management, as anything, when you're doing something this large, is a very difficult thing to do. So we really, the consistency of the daily meeting is really important, and really driving the need for making sure people understand that this is one of the highest priorities that we have. And not only at the management level, but really getting the managers to understand that so that they can make sure that they're really emphasizing that with the custodial teams and using training, coaching, and counseling, and then ultimately discipline if necessary in order to drive performance within the portfolio. And we've really been adamant about this and being focused on first, making sure we're providing our custodians with every resource we possibly can, including training. And as Rob had mentioned, going from 1 day to now 10 days of training for a custodian, they should be coming on fully understanding what their overall scope of work is, the responsibility and expectations, and be much better suited to operate. And now our managers are able to more effectively coach and counsel their custodians as well, and make sure that they're using crowd comfort. We do have a target of 80% that we set for our teams by the end of the year. Again, this is our first year of managing in-house, and also our first year of using crowd comfort. So we anticipated the need for this change management in this first year, really driving home this overall, the usage of the program, and then really working towards quality and assurance as we get to that point. Another piece I do want to mention that Rob and the team really focused on, again, is making sure that we are giving our custodians as much support as we can. And as part of that, making sure we're rewarding specific custodians and or groups of custodians and networks for the really the hard work that they're doing. So this year we had, I think it was our first ever custodial award ceremony that awarded top performers within a number of different categories related to some of the work that they do within our buildings, but also related to crowd comfort and their performance and the usage of crowd comfort within their schools and or their portfolio. And as part of that, really creating and raising them up to be part of the team, so that they know that, we really want to embrace them and we really want to work with them and support them when they are performing. And we've seen that to be very successful in helping us continue to grow the program and really get people on board with the direction that we're moving. Next slide. And then just the final piece, so I kind of talked about the daily use of crowd comfort. The final piece is really the project work tracking. So we do project work at every seasonal break that we have, with summer obviously being the largest scope of work that we have within the given year, and the only time we have to do our deep cleaning within our buildings. Previously, a lot of this was managed in spreadsheets and or managed at a very difficult means and pace. And now within crowd comfort, we've been managing our project work for the last couple breaks, and then spring break, I think, will be our third kind of break that we're using the crowd comfort project tracking solution to allow us to more effectively develop the scope of work for every single school related to what type of project work we're doing within these buildings, and then track that project work throughout the duration of the break and at the end of the break, to make sure that we're effectively going through and completing those tasks, and those tasks that were not able to be completed for whatever reason that may be, that we identify what those tasks are and make sure that we get them on either the next seasonal break, or if need be, do them on a weekend or overtime if it's an absolute necessity. So this has been a really effective tool. It hasn't been tried, true tested as part of our summer program, and we're really using these seasonal breaks to test it out and work out some of the kinks. And it's actually really done a great job, and teams are starting to get really acclimated to it. So we're really excited about using this for our summer break. And with that, Sarah, I think that's all I have on crowd comfort for right now.
Thanks, Brian, for sharing all that great information. This is exciting. I'm going to keep my transition short so we can be sure to hear from our next two panelists. So thanks, Brian. Next, I'd like to introduce Rich Schleier. Rich is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. Rich, welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your time today. So my name's Rich Schleier. I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety at Chicago Public Schools. I've been working with the district since June of 2020 and have 24 years of experience working with school districts and environmental issues. So at the environmental program at Chicago Public Schools, we have a staff of 3 people. Paige Ecton, who you'll hear from later talking about the drinking water program, also runs our asbestos and lead-based paint programs. And then I have a chemical hygiene officer that helps with used chemicals, expired cleaning products, and then emergency response activities. So how do we handle this? We have, as Brian and Rob mentioned, we have over 650 buildings on 540 campuses. So the district split up the city into 6 geographic regions, and we use 3 managing environmental consultants, so independent environmental consultants, to manage 2 regions each. So any environmental activities, for instance, on the north side, will go to one of our MECs. We have a central MEC and a southern portion, as well as we have a floater MEC that can handle and jump in and provide support as needed. or address any, district-wide projects we may have. Next slide, please. So during COVID, each of our MECs, let me point out, has a certified industrial hygienist on staff. So during COVID, we met and we're trying to figure out a mechanism to get information out to our parents and students about the safety of our classrooms. So we developed an indoor air quality assessment program. These were conducted by the managing environmental consultants, and they consisted of a visual inspection in all classrooms and offices. And what that was to look for mold, to see if there were odors, to see if there were any environmental concerns not related to a direct read instrument. We also picked different parameters, one that had a ASHRAE standard or some sort of standard we could compare that information to. And two, it was that we had technology that could be easily utilized to do the assessments. So we picked temperature using ASHRAE standard to make sure that we had heat in the building and the classrooms were ready for occupancy. Relative humidity, another ASHRAE standard, to make sure we didn't have excess humidity to encourage mold growth. Carbon monoxide we did in winter only. Carbon dioxide, our first assessment we did when the buildings were unoccupied. Since then, we've changed that and we'll only do assessments when the buildings were occupied. But carbon dioxide was picked to make sure we had enough fresh air coming into these classrooms as part of the return to school program. And then particulates, we wanted to know, do we have our air filtrations operating correctly? Do we have dust in these classrooms? Are there any, concerns with particulates? All of these reports, the MECs would go do their assessments, draft a report. If the managing environmental consultant flagged an exceedance, say we had carbon dioxide higher than our ASHRAE standard, we would then add that onto a list to circle back. One, we would get notice. Back then, we did emails to our building engineer and building manager and say, hey, we noticed something in room 205. Please circle back and check the HVAC systems, make sure everything's functioning correctly. 99% of the times they would come back and say, yeah, Rich, the fan's down, or this is down, or we noticed X, Y, and Z. They would perform that corrective action and we would send the environmental consultant back in to retest to make sure that that room was safe for occupancy. Then we would take all these reports and post them on our CPS website. So having this information in-house was fantastic, and I could tell the chief executive officer everything's safe for this school, for the kids to go back in. But parents were now able to jump on the website and pull up the report for their school and see that we did this testing, see that it was an environmental independent consultant. I could tell people all day that their classroom's safe for occupancy, but me being a CPS employee, they kind of scrutinize what I'm saying. With that independent environmental consultant, it carried a lot more weight and message to our community to say these were done by professionals and independent consultants. Next slide, please. As we, over time, we shifted our program from our managing environmental consultants to our building engineers to do the indoor air quality assessment readings. So we purchased temp-top devices shown here on the right side and provided them all to everyone to a school in the district. So part of this is now we have to tell this person how to use that device. So we created a training program, walking them step by step through these devices, how to use them, what the parameters are, and what they mean relative to the environmental conditions in the school. Then we had to create a program for if they identified an exceedance. So if we had elevated temperatures, we called it a quality program, where we listed out 5 different steps for the building engineer to take, and then to go back and retest it. If he retested and still had an elevated temperature, then we had provisions for the next level staff person, I believe it was a zone chief we have, would come in and take readings. if they still had an elevated reading, that would trigger an email to the managing environmental consultant to come in and do follow-up assessment. So we created a program of steps to take, immediate steps to address, and then how to escalate a concern. Right now, our building engineers are checking the cafeteria, gymnasium, library. We asked them to check 2 classrooms, and this is on a quarterly basis now. And then they enter this data into a kind of a smart sheet equivalent that we can then track those readings and track any exceedances, and then track any follow-up that was completed. And we're currently looking at temperature, relative humidity, carbon dioxide, particulates, both PM10 and PM2.5, and formaldehyde. And then we're conducting a visual inspection for mold. So mold's one of our frustrating parameters. We have no standards that we can use for mold. So when we get a complaint from a teacher or staff member saying that we have mold in the classroom, we go in and conduct a visual assessment. We'll send in our managing environmental consultant, conduct a visual assessment, see if they notice any odors or any concerns, and then they'll send back a report saying, hey, we didn't see anything. We didn't notice any concerns. Very rarely do we do mold testing. We have done it before, but typically our focus is on a visual assessment to see if we identify any mold or moldy concerns in the area. And then the next slide. And then one of our new programs that we're doing, we have remote monitoring devices. They're halo detectors, a little bit about the size of a smoke detector, that we're placing throughout various school buildings. These check for multiple, over 30 different parameters. We're not using all of them, but they can check temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, smoking, vaping, all different parameters that are then monitored 24 hours a day, and then sent back via a web platform, and they can trigger alerts. So if there is a smoking alert in the bathroom, that alert can immediately be sent to school principal or to school security if that option's being utilized. Or if we have elevated CO2 in a classroom, that alert gets sent, and we can then have the building engineer immediately respond and go find out what's going on. Is it a bunch of kids came in from gym and they're sitting under this one detector, or anything along those lines? But we're able to now detect that in a real-time basis. One of the things I will mention about CPS's environmental program, it's located in the facilities department. So Rob Chrisley is our executive director. So we are able to work hand in hand with our facility managers or building engineers when an environmental issue is identified to help correct that. And with Rob's direction and his support, we're able to address many more environmental issues than if our group was located outside of the facilities group. I think that's it, sir. I don't have anything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich, for sharing all that great information. Appreciate you. We are going to introduce our final speaker for today. Paige, we've probably got 5 or 6 minutes just so that we can have a couple of minutes for questions at the end. Really thrilled to have you with us today. Paige is the environmental manager and is going to talk to us about water quality. Paige?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the environmental manager. I've been with the district for about 4 years. And in my current position for a little over 2.5 years. Today, as Sarah mentioned, I'll be talking about our water quality testing program. You could jump to the next slide. All right, so just for some background information, in 2016, CPS announced a district-wide water quality testing program out of an abundance of caution to ensure the water in our schools is safe. CPS facilities and nutrition and support service stakeholders collaborated with the Chicago Department of Water Management and Illinois Department of Public Health on the water sampling methodology, what constitutes as a potable water source, and the effects of lead in the human body. CPS helped craft legislation that eventually became Illinois law in 2017, requiring all school districts in the state to test their drinking water by December 31st of 2018. That law and requirement has since ended, but CPS continues to test the drinking water in our schools. Next slide. All new potable water fixtures installed must be tested for lead and meet the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines prior to being put into use at a school, which is 5 parts per billion. For our existing drinking water fixtures, we conduct routine sampling at 25% of our schools on an annual basis. Our MEC will go out and collect 5 250 milliliter samples per fixture. For any fixture that exceeds the lead standard, it is immediately taken out of service by our building engineers with the who then post signage indicating the fixture has been removed from service. And the building engineer will then initiate a 56-hour flush of that fixture. So it'll be 8 hours a day for 7 consecutive work days. It's important to note that any fixture that exceeds the lead standard will not be placed back in service until it's retested and meets the IDPH guidelines. For fixtures that we have 3 or more failed mitigation attempts, once 3 failed mitigation attempts occur, we reassess to determine if plumbing upgrades are needed or if fixture replacement will be sufficient. Next slide. CPS exceeds state and federal testing requirements. As I had mentioned, we conduct sampling at 25% of our schools on an annual basis. The district has approximately 15,000 drinking water fixtures. To date, we have collected and analyzed over 122,000 samples. Of those, approximately 10% have exceeded the lead standard. For all sampling events, regardless of the sample results, we issue a sample results letters to network chiefs and school principals. From there, they're able to share that out with the parents and then community members as they see fit. All of our sample results are posted on the CPS water quality testing website. This is accessible to anybody, and it can be filtered down by school. Some of our new initiatives, we've partnered with Zern Elke to implement a auto flushing fixture pilot program. It started with 2 fixtures, and we recently expanded and added an additional 30 fixtures. The unique thing about these fixtures is they're able to connect to a software called PlumSmart, which allows us to remotely change the flushing frequency and duration of these fixtures. And the last thing we're running a pilot for is new fixtures. We're trying to reduce the amount of flushing for newly installed fixtures. The reason being is our capital program replaces anywhere between 80 to 100 fixtures over summer. A lot of the times those fixtures aren't getting installed until end of July or early August. With the school starting mid-August, it's difficult for us to do that full 56-hour flush and get the lab results back in time and get those fixtures in service before the students and staff return. So we're looking into ways to reduce the amount of flushing for new fixtures. Okay, Sarah, that's all I have.
Thanks, Paige. That was so great. So much good information there. Appreciate you sharing all that. We have a few minutes left for questions. For those of you listening, if you have any questions that you haven't put in the Q&A yet, please go ahead and do so. But I'm gonna start with a question for Brian. Brian, I'm wondering, this could be Brian, but also anyone is welcome to chime in. Wondering about now that crowd comfort has been implemented for a while, how have attitudes or beliefs about using that technology or any technology, like have you seen a shift among your staff? Are there challenges? Is it easier? What's changed with that implementation?
I'll take a stab at that. I think, 2 things. One, folks have embraced it, and then we have folks who are hesitant about it, right? And I think the folks that have embraced it, and we've gotten a lot more of that now that we've explained what we're doing, why we're doing it. I mean, ultimately, this is not about tracking where people are in the building. It's about giving us insight as to what actually is going on in the building. And I think a lot of our custodians have realized that they have been thrown under the bus numerous times in the past because of something that was perceived that they didn't do, or wasn't done to a level that the person that was complaining thought it should have been done, right? And when they're meeting the standards, so with crowd comfort, they're allowed to take pictures of their work, and that has allowed them to document that yes, they did clean this room. Yes, it was looking great at 7:45 last night when they were in there and they left the room. The garbage was gone and everything's good. Because we get a lot of we have a contentious relationship with our teachers union to a certain degree, and they like to throw us under the bus. And so Twitter or X or whatever, they'll take pictures of, look, no one emptied out the garbage in my room. Well, actually, I have a photo from 12 hours before when it was just emptied out. And now the custodians are seeing that that's a protection for them, right? They're showing their work, they're documenting their work, and we have a timestamp on it. And that's a great thing. And then on the flip side of that, the custodians now have this ability to put in requests for equipment and cleaning supplies that used to go through text or a phone call, or just maybe a conversation in the hallway. Well, now it's all being documented. And now I can say, hey, why has this custodian been asking for XYZ for 3 weeks? And now I can hold my team accountable for making sure that the custodians have the things that they need to do their job so that they can be effective. And I think those two things have really kind of warmed the hearts of our custodians. They're also getting a free use of a phone too, that they can use for both public and private use, subject to all of our rules and regulations, of course. But ultimately, they're feeling empowered, and they're feeling that they can document what's going on, and they can help to hold other people accountable. And so I think it's been really good at that. Now we have some folks that just don't want to deal with technology. I get that. The average age of our workforce is probably in the 50s. I don't think we have an actual age, but folks that are less sophisticated with phones and technology. And here's an opportunity for a lot of them to really, learn the basics and do the basics, but also kind of become, which we think is important, that the technology is going to come to custodians and to cleaning, and how we integrate and teach and use that technology is going to improve the outcomes in our schools. And the custodians are the ones that embrace that and know how to use the technology are going to be the folks that are going to be really wanted in the upcoming years.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions really quickly. The first one is for you, Rich. As CPS has increased information that's available about indoor air and water quality testing, have you encountered any challenges with communicating this information and helping the larger school community understand the meaning behind the data that you're sharing?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. I'll try to be quick. So I notice when we post our lead sampling results on a website, we'll get a teacher or principal call up and say, hey, I noticed such and such a fixture exceeded the lead limits on the testing done in October. What they don't realize or see is 6 lines down or later at another sampling event after the flushing's been conducted, testing is redone. So we typically will say, hey, please, look, we'll go through the test results with them and say, look down here, here's the same fixture code location that shows that we're above the lead limit. A lot of folks don't understand that the Illinois Department of Public Health allows the 5 parts per billion lead standard. So no level of lead is safe in the drinking water, but we adhere to that Illinois Department of Public Health standard. So we'll kind of have to walk through and explain that to them what the standard is.
Thanks, Rich. I know we're at our time, so I'm going to wrap up with one question for you, Rob. It's a big question, but you'll have to give a short answer.
Right.
What is your vision? We talked a little bit about the creativity and imagination needed for all the work that's already happened in this transformation. What is your vision for technology and information management at CPS What is your vision for what it looks like in the next 2 to 3 years? What's happening next?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing, the halos, crowd comfort. As I mentioned before, one of the things that my biggest problem with coming into this job in this position was I had no insight into our buildings and what was actually going on. I actually had to call somebody, and then, it's what they're going to tell me is what I'm going to hear. And so we've really been looking for ways to verify and monitor and be transparent about what's going on in our schools. And I'm a big advocate for collecting data. And when that data comes in, and if it shows that I need to do something or my team needs to do something, then we'll do it, right? And that sets a standard for us to act, much the same as Healthy Green Schools and college program. It's setting a standard for us to act against. This is the line that we need to stay on this side of this. And to me, that using that technology and all this information gathering is going to better enable us to understand what's going on in our schools, identify issues that may, when we're operating out of standards, right? And give us some ability to, understand what's going on there and then help to figure out solutions. Because in some cases, I can discuss things that we've learned from monitoring indoor air quality, both in the manual and through the Halo systems. Hey, there's some certain stuff that the way our buildings are designed is not optimal. And that's based upon choices that were made years ago in regards to air conditioning systems. So it tells us what we need to do. And most importantly, I can start sharing this information with my community to show that we are meeting standards and that we are using technology to help monitor. And it's not us just making up numbers, but it's a hardcore maintenance and standards. And right now we're actually working on that notification system now, so that when an event does come in, CO2 goes high in a room, temperatures go high in a room, we actually will have an email distribution and text distribution to the important people that need to respond to that and then act on that information. So that's my goal: is more information, more transparency, show people that we're doing a good job. Because we have always taken a beating at Chicago Public Schools because of our financial situation and just our sheer scale. But I've always known this, and I think our team has always done this, is that we care about these kids and we want the best possible outcomes for everybody involved. And we're willing to, understand what's going on and know, hey, okay, we need to improve on this. And these standards and this data allow us to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. And thank all of you, Brian, Paige, Rich, Rob, everyone for your time and for sharing all this important information with us today. Thank you to those who spent the time with us listening. I know we're wrapping up a couple minutes late, but I think this was such great information. We really wanted to make sure to get it all out there. And this is really just the first webinar of our program here at Healthy Green Schools and Colleges. So if you're not already signed up for the newsletter, or you're not already kind of checking out those emails as they come out, please do so. If you're a school district interested in joining the program, please reach out. If you're a company that has offerings for schools in alignment with our standard, we want to talk to you as well. So please be in touch. Thank you all for listening. And again, Chicago Public Schools team, we're thrilled to have you be part of Healthy Green Schools and Colleges. And thank you again for your time today. Have a great afternoon, everybody.